Hello makers, I'm Catherine here at Swiss Share Stitchery, and if you're new here, I do sewing and DIY tutorials every week. Now this week I wanted to show you the Ultimate Art Organizer by Sew Sweetness. I turned mine into a needle book, which you can see behind me. So let's get to it.
What's the use in holding on? Can we find a way where we could spend some time alone? You know where to find me, you know which way to go. As long as you love me, we'll be singing all night long. So take a minute to hold me, I want nothing more.
Now, I turned this art folio into a needle book, and I wanted to show you the alternate pages that I included so that you can turn the art folio into a needle book or a sewing organizer.
For one, the vinyl zipper pockets.
So the first thing that I decided to do was add in a couple of zippered vinyl pockets. Now I am a big fan of vinyl pockets, which is why I decided to include them. You can really see what's inside nice and easily, and it helps me to stay better organized.
For the fabric, we are going to cut 4 strips at 4.15 centimeters or 1 5/8 of an inch. And we are going to cut 1 strip at 2 1/8 of an inch. And then for the vinyl, we will need 1 at 3 inches tall and 1 at 3.5 inches tall. So these are the panels that we're going to make. So we're going to cut 4 strips of fabric at 4.15 centimeters. And I am just using a directional fabric, so make sure that the direction is going in the same way. And then we are going to take just a regular zipper, not an invisible zipper, and we are going to place the fabric right sides together with the zipper. And then I am just going to pin this up here, and apologies on the lighting on this video, I was having a bit of trouble with that. Then we're just going to stitch it, and then we're going to press it down nicely so that it lays quite nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I am just marking where it starts and stops to make sure that I don't have it going off the side. And in terms of how long your zipper is and your length, it's going to depend on whether you're making the large art folio, which is the one that I decided to make, or the smaller version that is included in the Sew Sweetness pattern. Now, this is what it looks like once it is all pressed, and I'm just moving the zipper out of the way to get it nice and pressed, and then we're going to top stitch that. So you can see this one is top stitched. And this is what it will look like so far. Next thing that we're going to do is I'm unzipping it, and then I am going to be using my ruler to mark out 1 inch from the center of that zipper tape, because I don't want it to extend too far past. So the squares that we cut out earlier is just to give us a little extra room as we're stitching and folding things in place. So we're going to trim this down right now, and I'm just using my quilting ruler to draw a line, or make it even easier, use your rotary cutter to cut it. If you don't have a rotary cutter, draw that line and use your tailor's shears to trim it down. And then what we are going to do is we're going to take this vinyl piece, and this is going to be our bottom piece that we have trimmed down. So the 3.5 inch vinyl piece, we are going to place right on top of this. And I am using clips, do not use pins because you will poke permanent holes in your vinyl. And then stitch along there with 1/4 inch seam allowance. All the seam allowances are 1/4 inch. Fold it back in on itself and then top stitch it. So this is what it looks like right now, and I've done the exact same thing for the 3.5 inch pocket on the other side, and then I am just taking the bottom of the one and the vinyl, placing them right sides together using my clips right here, and then I am going to stitch this in place right along here. And once it is stitched, we can just fold it out of the way and top stitch this. So here it is, nice and top stitched, and then I've got my back piece, which I used the Sew Sweetness pattern to cut out that template. And then what we need to do is we need to pin this onto the template. So first thing I like to do is pin the corners, and I apologize for the noise. We are having some construction done at our house, so if you hear some buzzing noise in the background, it sounds like they are sawing on my main floor here, so I do apologize. And then I am just using the clips to get the bottoms done. Now, once we have this all pinned in place, use pins where the fabric is and clips where the vinyl is. And then I'm just going in with my rotary cutter and I am trimming around the edges and those curves because this project bag has curved edges. They're not square, which is what we had cut our vinyl and fabric to. So I'm just going to the other side and just trimming around nicely. The next step is to stitch right along each of these sides to separate the two pockets and then all around the perimeter. And so you can see I've got this open, we have a pocket, it stops right there, those markers aren't going anywhere, and I'm just going to put a couple other sewing notions in here so you can see the pocket. Now we want to take out these stops to the zipper because when we're putting it together, you are going to break a needle. There are a ton of layers to go through when you're putting this project together, and you don't want that in there. Hack number 2 is the sorted needle page. Now, the next thing that I knew I needed to include in this needle book was somewhere to store all of my machine needles. And I tend to have a lot of machine needles on hand, a lot of specialty needles, and I am always going in and switching back and forth between whether I'm sewing knits or cotton, so using universal needles, and I wanted a place to store some of those used needles. Now in the past, what I would do is I would just take a Sharpie and put an X on the package from the sewing machine needle that I was using to denote that I had used it. Now, if you don't know this already, you should change your sewing machine needle about every 8 hours of sewing time because it does get dull and you do need to switch them out. But I created this page for the used sewing machine needles in their correct spot. So this is the needle page. I've printed it on printable fabric and it actually has a sticky side to it which creates a nice durability to this page. Now you could print it out at spoon flour if you wanted to, or do what I did and I just picked up this printable fabric at Walmart and I glued it to a piece of cotton. And I'm just marking the areas just like on the pattern. And this is what it looks like when it is all inside your folio. And I wanted to point out here where I am pointing with this particular button pin. That is exactly where the machine needle that is currently in my sewing machine sits, so that I always know where it goes if I'm switching my needle out. Hack number 3 are the vinyl pockets for the needle cases. So this is a really handy pocket to have. So I've cut some strips of vinyl and I've actually cut 4 of these strips. So just as long as they are, so about 8.5 inches by 2 inches. Then you're going to need the binding pieces and I cut those at 2.5 inches for the width on that. So now we are going to begin to put this together. First thing we're going to do is get our pressing mat out, and using the binding pieces, I am going to first fold it in half. And if you've watched any of my videos and have seen me do bias binding, this is the exact same step that we are going to do. So I am going to fold each edge towards that center mark that I had just folded. And once that is done, I am going to then fold it in half again so that we form our bias strip. And just repeat that with all 4 strips. And if you're doing a double page, you will make 8. And then I am placing the vinyl in between those 2 layers. And it is rather slippery, so make sure you use your clips. And I like to clip on either end and the center and then stitch it close to that folded edge, just like so, going through all of the layers. Once that is done, we are going to then stitch the pockets in so that they are large enough to fit the needle cases. So I am just using a piece of backing and I'm just using this plain white backing here. And then I am going to grab the pockets here. So I am just lining up the pocket right where that curve ends on the pattern. And because I'm making a 2-page spread for holding all of the machine needles, I am going to match it up on either side just by placing the 2 panels together. Make sure you know which way is facing up, because that is incredibly important with these pockets. And once I have marked that, I am going to pin it in place so it does not move anywhere. And then I am going to just trim off the excess and place the alligator clips going along the side and stitch going down the sides. Now, a tip for this is to use a Teflon foot. If you don't have a Teflon foot, it will stick, but I have a solution for you. So what you need to do is grab your handy dandy invisible tape. So don't use the regular tape, the invisible tape that's kind of milky, that's the one you want to use. Place it on the bottom of your regular presser foot, and then just use some sort of implement to poke a hole where your needle will go. That way you're not dulling your needle, and it slides perfectly. Saves you like 15 bucks. And the next thing that you need to do is add your next one on. So we want to hide that stitching that we had done to attach that bottom of the vinyl layer. So I am just placing the top right over that stitching line so that it fits nice and perfectly, and just attaching it the same way, going along the sides and the bottom. And we are going to repeat this 2 more times. So I'm going to speed up this footage just ever so slightly, because I'm just repeating these steps over and over, trimming those edges, adding in those clips and stitching them down. And here is the last one here. Now, the reason we don't go all the way to the bottom is because it will create too much bulk when you go to actually close the folio if you're placing items right at the bottom there. So there is a little bit at the bottom of this that is unused, but that is intentional. So once you have that all stitched in place, I like to mark where my bottom and my top are so that I don't get confused. Now, the next thing that you need to do is make sure that you are going to create these vertical lines. So I'm going 2 inches from the bottom, no more, because that's where the end of my area is. And then I am going to go in from the sides on each side here. And if you didn't catch those measurements, I will have those measurements for you again. Let me just write them here. So 2 1/4 inches on either side, and 1 3/4 of an inch in the middle is how far away we're going to go. Now, it's very important that you're stitching from the bottom towards the top. Otherwise, when you flip it back over, you're going to catch the top of those pockets, and we don't want to do that. So I am starting right at that mark right here, and I'm going nice and slow. Make sure you do a back stitch. You want it to be nice and secure. And because we're going over vinyl, this is like a one-time chance. If you don't get it right, you can't unpick your stitches because you will see those holes. So just be very careful. And once that is done, we have our pockets. Now for hack number 4, the elastic for the mesh pocket. Now, I also wanted to adjust the mesh pocket. So it's the exact same as the one that's included in the pattern, but what I decided to do was add an elastic to the mesh pocket so that it would hold things in a little bit tighter than it would just sliding it in without having that elastic in there. So I thought I would show you really quickly how I did this. All I really needed to do was cut a length of elastic slightly shorter than the overall width of the binding that I had put on, and then slide that through with a safety pin, stitch on the one end to secure it in place, and then continue to feed that elastic through and stitch down the other side. And then I attached it just the same way that she does in her video. Now, I'm not doing a full sew along here, and the reason for that is because she has a fantastic sew along video that you can download on her website, which accompanies this pattern, and no sense in doing it twice. Am I right? Next up, I decided to add in a divided pocket on the back, as well as another vinyl pocket with a couple of different slots. And you could use these slots for machine presser feet if you wanted to do a whole page on them. What I like to use mine for is things like my hand sewing needles and safety pins and things like that, that I need to grab and can have them nice and handy.
Now for the front and the back, instead of doing a solid piece of cloth, I decided to do this cute little star here. And if you want a tutorial on how you can make that block, I have that in a variety of different sizes for a free download on how you can create that star block in many different sizes. And for the back, I just hand appliqued on a hexie and then quilted around the edges. Now I really love this pattern because it has separate zippers for each of the pages. Now I don't really like things that tie up or snap up because things can fall out. But when I can zipper them around, things stay nice and contained in my folio, and I really enjoyed that. And the fact that you have so many pages in here really helps to create a nice variety and create a very useful book, as opposed to just maybe having 2 interior pages. You have a whole book inside of it. I would love to know if you have made the ultimate art folio. Let me know in the comments down below any neat pages that you added in, or if you're just thinking about different pages, do let me know. Until next time, makers, let's get our Sew-Spiration on.
Your arms